Okay, hello. We're going to be talking just real quick about some ways that we can use the CAS calculator to draw trigonometric graphs and analyze them. So the first thing we're going to need to do is add a trigonometric graph. We can go number 2, add graphs, and we can just use the little trig button to put in a graph. Let's say we're going to have a cosine. So we'll just type in cosine of x, and there it is. Lovely. One problem with this though is that my scale is not very good. So just like normal, if I want to set my scale, I can go Menu, then Window/Zoom, then Window Settings, number 1. And the real nice thing about doing it this way is that I can set exact values. So I know that for my regular cosine, my period is going to be 2 pi. So I can tell the minimum value to be 0 and the maximum value to be 2 pi. And similarly, this is just cosine of x. So I should have a minimum and a maximum of -1 and 1 respectively. So I'm going to make my graph a little bit bigger than that so I can see it. So now if I press auto, you can see I go all the way from 0 up to 2 pi. The traditional way that we'd find the x-intercepts or any other point on this would be to go Analyze Graph menu, then Analyze Graph number 6. Then we can go and look for a 0, and it tells us we want a lower bound and upper bound. There it is. Ooh. Let's just try that again. Here's our lower bound, here's our upper bound. Very nice, that's our minimum. The problem with this though is that we have an exact value. And I don't really want an exact value here because, sorry, we have a decimal value. But pretty much every time we have a problem in trigonometry, it's going to come back to having exact values. So we need to get rid of this. So I can select this and then press delete, and I'll get rid of the point as well. Get out of here, you. And so what we can do instead of using the analyze graph, if we go all the way down to number 8 for geometry, and then points and lines, whoops, just double click for me, apologies. So we go to number 8 for geometry, then points and lines. Then we can go up to this one that says point on. And this puts a point onto our line. Great. But the problem is, here's my point. It's still giving me some decimal answers. So what I can do, let's just shift it down over here. What I can do, select my point, and then click about. If I press tab, you can see that I'm now selecting the text. And so if I double click, eventually I get to the point where I can edit my x value. And maybe I want to find out what the function is when x is pi. So I can type that in there. And there it is. It tells me it's -1. Maybe, and I'll just shift it back out so it's a bit easier for me to click on. So I'll click on it again. And maybe I want to find out what the value is when maybe I want to find out what cos of pi on 3 is. If I do that, then it takes me over to here, and you can see it's giving me exact values now. It's giving me 1/2. This is really useful when we start getting to irrational values. So maybe I have pi on 6. I can press enter, and now it tells me 3 pi on 2. This is really good because you don't have to remember the value of 3 pi on 2 anymore as a decimal. You can just type this in and get it from there. We can do a similar thing. We can still drag it along, but you can see as soon as we drag it, it gets rid of our nice exact value and takes us back on. So just to reiterate how we do this, we make sure we have nothing selected, and then we go over, we hover so that it says text, we click again, and that will let us edit the x value. I believe, although I'm just doing this now, we can also edit the y value. So maybe I want to find out where we get negative square root, so, oops, wrong button, negative square root of shush. So I'm going to change my y value to minus square root, or to square root of 3 over 2. And now if I press enter, you can see it's given it to me up here. When it's doing this, it's always going to take you to the closest value that it is. So even though we still have square root of 3 over 2 on here, like we saw before, it's taking me back to here. You'll also notice that this one has given me a decimal value for x. So it will take you from a exact value for x to an exact value for y, but it won't take you from an exact value for y to an exact value for x. It will take you from an exact value for y to a decimal value of x. And that's just a limitation of the software, unfortunately. I hope this has been helpful.